Tonight on the Daily Debrief.
Those accusers aren't giving you the whole truth.
An ex-NFL player's defense team says lies, mistakes, and paranoia led to their client being accused of rapes and related crimes. Also,
so you could have killed yourself, son.
The mother of 5 children killed by their father describes the discipline matter which the defendant says caused him to snap. Then she breaks down on the stand.
Oh, God. I'm sorry.
Plus, closing arguments in the case of a man who drove the wrong way down the highway and killed 5 teens. Real-life cases are happening nationwide. This is the Daily Debrief for Monday, May 20th. And good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Debrief. I'm Aaron Keller, along with none other than attorney Michael Bryant. Good to see you again.
You too, Aaron.
All right, opening statements today in the trial of an NFL player accused of raping 5 women ranging in ages from 17 to 77. Kellen Winslow II played 10 seasons with the Cleveland Browns. He faces the charges on your screen, some in multiple counts for his alleged conduct against the unnamed victims. The maximum penalty, if convicted, is life with the chance for parole. Here is how the prosecutor described, in graphic detail, one of the alleged attacks.
When she got into the front passenger seat of the defendant's car, he then told her, she began to plead again, "I won't say anything if you just let me go right now. Nobody will ever know." Again, she was in survival. Defendant said, "No, I'll kill you. I'm going to you right here." And he removed what he was wearing, what she described as workout spandex, or what wrestlers would wear, that extends up over his shoulders all the way down to his thighs. And he exposed his penis. And she's going to describe it in detail. He was erect, he was large, and he told her to perform oral sex on him. And she's going to tell you that she did, that she was afraid of what would happen if she did it. You're going to hear that after what she estimated to be about 2 minutes or so of performing oral sex on him, that she couldn't really do that. Physically, she was unable to do that. And that the defendant then pinned her down, crawled on top of her as she sat in the front passenger seat, hurt her with the weight of his legs, placed his foot on her thigh, pinned her down to where she could feel the pain of his pressure, the weight of his body, and then he raped her.
The prosecutor portrayed the other alleged attacks in similar terms and said the early accusations resulted in many others coming forward.
As a result of the investigation and the numerous victims who had come forward and described in detail what this man had done, that another victim came forward. That after this defendant had been arrested and arraigned on charges, and there was, as you can imagine, as you sit there today, significant media attention as a result, that across the country, Jane Doe 4, a military wife married to a Marine staff sergeant, called the police. She came forward and said that she too had something taken from her by this defendant. That she too had been victimized. That she then knew that he hadn't changed his ways and this wasn't just an isolated incident for her back in 2003 as a high school senior.
The defense says the prosecution is telling half-truths and leaving out details. The defense says the sex was consensual in some cases and flat out made up in others.
Keller Winslow's been honest from the start over a year ago. He admitted he had consensual sex with those accusers. Way back when. He was never dishonest about it. He admitted it a year ago. You gotta have the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Those accusers aren't giving you the whole truth. Jane Doe 1, she leaves out the fact that she knows who he is. She knows that he's a famous football star. He's charged with kidnapping her She wanted to get into his car. That was her choice. She wanted to. She asked to get into his car. She leaves out the fact that they went into the shopping center, crowded shopping center, in the afternoon. Her dry cleaners is right there, her sushi restaurant's right there, 24-hour fitness. They park next to two cars, and they have oral sex. Per her original statement, it was not forced. She left that part out of her statement. She also says that she was menstruating. That's where the blood came from. That's what she originally told the officers. She's not giving you the whole story. Jane Doe 2. She's not giving you the whole story. She leaves out the fact that we find out later, that we learn that, oh yeah, they did talk about having sex for money. Of course, that comes out months after her original statement to the police. There was sperm found. She did do a SART exam, and there was sperm found. Sperm of another guy.
The defense even blamed public paranoia for the existence of accuser number 5.
Jane Doe 5, created by the media. Jane Doe 5 says that he's in a jacuzzi masturbating. We'll find out later, months later after she gives her original statement, that she didn't see anything. She never saw him nude in any way, shape, or form. She didn't even look at him. In fact, we find out later that there was another guy in the jacuzzi that didn't see any of this. And so when Kellen's foot touches her foot, she freaks out. Why? Because that's the predator, that's the sexual predator that they see on the news. His news story was actually playing on the TV in the gym. Her husband tells her, that's the guy. And that's why she freaks out. She doesn't even see the other guy in the hot tub.
The defense further said that this was a defendant, or the defendant rather, was a target because of his fame, his status, and because he had money.
Kellen has lived a very uncommon life. He is the son of San Diego Charger, Hall of Famer, Keller Michel Sr. He's been in the spotlight since he was young. And when you're in the spotlight, when you're young, that's very difficult. But one of the key things here is, when you're in the spotlight, people want things from you. And that's just the way it is.
Joining me tonight on the debrief is attorney Michael Bryant. So, Michael, the defense is taking the tactic here that, look, the client is a cheater, but not a rapist.
Yeah, well,
I mean, do jurors buy that or not?
I think they've got a mess to deal with here, because we've got 5 different victims, 12 different counts. They got to have it all laid out in a way that this jury can consume it properly and come to the right decision, whichever side you're arguing. And I think at this point, having heard the prosecution opening and the defense opening, I want to hear the witnesses. Let me bring them on.
Exactly. Here, and of course, we can't see them. We'll be able to hear them because we can't show sex crimes victims in this jurisdiction, or many other for that matter. So do you buy this whole theory from the state that, you know, one accusation, it becomes public because he's famous, and then these other people who were afraid to come forward finally call the police and say, I'm a victim too? That's the state's version of it. The defense saying, no. They are all copycats who had transient passings with the defendant, and they're just looking to get after his money, take advantage of his fame, something like that. I mean, two completely opposite sides of the story.
And it's not a bad argument, but I think the bigger problem is you've got a 2003 case and a 2019 case, and you're now weaving all of these things together. It's certainly possible that those later cases were spurred as a result of hearing about the more recent cases. That doesn't mean they aren't true. It just means they didn't come forward, and that's always going to be a problem for the prosecution.
You know, the age range here, according to the complaint, 17 to 77, that's a heck of an age range.
That is quite the range. He was, if you believe the prosecution, non-discriminate in terms of ages. Yep.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting case, and we're just in day one. Witness testimony tomorrow. Michael, we'll see you again in a couple of minutes. Closing arguments today in the case of horror on the highway. Stephen Burgoyne of Vermont facing 5 counts of second-degree murder and other lesser charges. Authorities believe this is what it probably looked like as Burgoyne sped down the wrong lane of a Vermont interstate highway, swerved to the left, and slammed head-on into a vehicle which was traveling in the correct direction. The occupants of that car all died at ages 15 and 16, but the defendant survived. He stole a responding police car, took off down the highway, turned around, and then rammed back into the wreckage of the first crash at 103 miles an hour. We are monitoring that case for a verdict. And still ahead tonight here on The Debrief, prosecutors say a father murdered his 5 kids. The mother of those children breaks down while confronting the father, who now claims he was insane when he killed. We head back to the courthouse after this break. And now to that death penalty case we're following out of South Carolina involving 5 dead children. Timothy Jones Jr. admits to killing his kids, ages 1 through 8, and then driving around with their bodies in the back of his Cadillac SUV for more than a week. Authorities say he strangled 4 of the kids and basically punished another one to death through physical force. Jones is arguing insanity. A jury of 10 women and 8 men is hearing the case. 6 will eventually learn they are only alternates. The defendant spoke with the authorities many times and even told the FBI how each child died. He said most of them knew they would suffer and that they were scared for their lives.
Just tell us the order.
The defendant wept in court as the jury heard how Jones said he killed his son Natan because 4 power outlets in the house had blown out.
He said to get his son to talk about this, he began PTing his ass.
Those were his words?
Those were his words.
That meant military-style physical training, but it also meant hitting and spanking Natan for hours.
He claimed he knew that he had pushed his son too far, and when he checked on his child, his son was no longer breathing.
Natan died. He was 6.
He repeatedly said it was not premeditated, that this was an accident with Natan.
Jones told the FBI that the voices in his head told him he was going to have to kill the rest of his children because no one would believe Natan died innocently. He started with the oldest boy, Elias, age 7.
He used his hands to strangle his child.
His final words?
According to Timothy Jones, Elias says, "Daddy, can I come with?" He chokes his son to death, and his son struggles as he's being strangled.
Then Mara Gracie, age 8, who Jones said he killed the same way.
According to Mr. Jones, Mara Gracie says before he strangles her, "Daddy, I love you."
She struggles as well. Then Gabriel, age 2, and finally Abigail, age 1. First, Jones said he strangled them with his hands. Then he said his hands were too big, so he had to use a belt.
Placed the belt around their neck, and then he had showed us how he had pulled the belt taut to kill his son.
The mother of the victims testified about the date the defendant admits to killing his children. He was irate over an issue apparently caused by his son involving those electrical outlets.
I said, "Son, what's wrong?" He said, "Mom, I didn't mean to." And Tim was going on in the background, and you could have killed yourself, son. And then got mad at me because I was trying to calm my son down.
What did you say to him?
That it was okay.
What could you hear the time doing?
Dry heaving. Like that. Like gasping for air because he had been crying so much. Like he couldn't catch his breath. Like he was just like that.
You told Natan it was okay.
Yeah. And Tim got mad and said, "Why do you always have to defend the kids?" I guess you could say I always defended the kids. He was more the disciplinary, I was not. I went on to disagree with him and let him know that I didn't think, that I thought that my son had gotten the point and that I was tired of hearing my kids crying all the time. And Tim hung up the phone and before he hung up the phone, told me to shut the up and hung up the phone. He was outraged. He was outraged. All he said was, "You're going to kill yourself. You could have killed yourself, son."
And later in the proceedings, that mother broke down, causing a delay in activity in court. This is raw emotion from a mother who lost 5 children.
My kids knew I loved them. Mira, my sweet, sweet daughter. I know that your heart feels heavy and that you feel really sad sometimes. I want to reassure you, sweetheart, that you, along with your brothers and sister, mean everything to me. You kids are my world, and Mommy and Daddy were very blessed to have you. God. Oh, God. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Just like it, right?
My babies, my babies.
Remember, this was a case which unraveled largely due to skilled interrogations by many officers, more so than it did by witnesses describing things to police, more so than it did by pure detective work. The defendant himself took authorities to the location where he threw the children's bodies into a series of trash bags. These are the evidence photos of what police found. A medical examiner explained what was inside and how the children died. That medical examiner testified about the state of the bodies, and here she described her examination of 2-year-old Gabriel Jones.
He was in 3 black plastic bags, which were open, and I was told they were open at the scene. The bags themselves were not torn. He was wrapped in a comforter and a pink sheet. He had on a pair of underwear, which I couldn't see the size on. But loosely in the bag also were an adult-sized shirt with partial bleaching appearance.
How did we look on your external examination?
He had decomposition changes, skin discoloration and slippage. There was no maggot activity. And also, again, because of the decomposition, we did full body x-rays and found no fractures. But on the right side of the neck was an impression that was kind of wide. It included 2 parallel lines on the side of the neck.
It's consistent with what Jones told the FBI. Remember, he also said that overexertion was the cause of the death of the first child. The medical examiner testified that it was indeed medically possible.
Is it possible to kill a young child by physical exertion?
Yes. Children in particular will dehydrate faster than adults because they have a larger body surface than the body mass. So they lose fluid quicker than adults. If you're working, exercise and whatever physical activity for a lengthy period of time, then you can lose enough fluid to become dehydrated.
Would there be any visible signs to an observer that the child is in danger?
They'd start to become weak and maybe disoriented and eventually become unconscious.
Does that happen quickly or is it over time?
Depends on the situation and the history of the patient. But it would take yeah, several minutes, many minutes, maybe 15, 20.
Attorney Michael Bryant is back once again tonight. So, Michael, that poor mother breaking down on the stand in the midst of reading a letter to her children, all 5 now gone. It's heart-wrenching to listen to, but as an attorney, how do you deal with it?
Well, initially you've got to just say, okay, I can't imagine what it was like. That's as close as it's going to get for anybody else to imagine what it's like to see that mother just collapse that way. I think, and the defense did a good job of not belaboring her cross-examination. That's one of the things you do. I was a little surprised she even recovered and made it back on the stand today, but she did for a short cross-exam and a one-question redirect. And I think that's what you've got to do.
It's one thing to look at the raw emotion, but keep in mind what's going on in the broader optics there. She's sitting in a chair just feet away from the man who admits that he did this, the father. And she's got to face him down as well as part of this.
And as you watch that video and her testimony, she's reading the letter and she glances over at the defendant, and then that triggers the emotion and the collapse. It's clear that she was uncomfortable being there and that he triggered that emotion.
Okay, and not only that, but then he stands up, because we watched that play out in real time. He stands up and just has a look on his face that I really can't describe.
Yeah, I know he's stoic, I guess, but you see him break down under other circumstances, like when he's doing something that seems outrageous, when he's talking to the cops. He's crying during his own discussion to the cops. But when you see this, your ex-wife, the mother of your kids, fall apart like that, and you're just like, are we done yet? Or is it ready for lunch? It's unbelievable.
Yeah, okay. Now, we know that this is an insanity defense case. We know that he claims he has a number of diagnoses, including schizophrenia. But what I'm keying in on here is this, and I assume that jurors, if they're to ask for a playback, they're going to ask for this one, was his FBI interview, where the FBI agent says to the defendant, okay, did you know what you were doing was wrong? And clearly they asked that question because that's the letter of the law in South Carolina for an insanity defense. And he said that he thought his actions could hurt the children, that he wanted to protect himself, but that he didn't think any of it was wrong. Okay, that sounds kind of like insanity there, but that he wasn't thinking about whether it was against the law, but he did know he was going to get caught. That sounds like he was sane and can be convicted.
No doubt about it. And when he says that's when the S hit the fan after Nathan died, he then wrapped up the other kids and killed them all. Why? Because he was afraid of getting caught for the initial death. That's why.
He knew he was going to get caught. That sounds like he knew right from wrong.
Sounds like it to me.
He would be able to be convicted. We'll have to wait and see how this case plays out. That's it for the debrief. We'll see you back here tomorrow, folks.